Let's talk about evil. Specifically, let's talk about an evil book. Malleus Maleficarum, also known as Hexenhammer or Hammer of the Witches, is pretty much exactly what it sounds like. It's a witch hunter's manual from the 15th century. The only reason this thing exists is because an inquisitor wasn't allowed to ask sexually probing and humiliating questions during a trial where a woman got accused of witchcraft, got pissed off about this, and fucked off back to Cologne to vomit his insanity into book form. While its actual influence on the European witch hunts is heavily questioned, what isn't questioned is just how misogynistic this thing is. This is a translated excerpt from the book, just to get us started on this road to madness. So Malleus Maleficarum is what is popularly referred to as a witch hunter manual. But the reality is somewhat more nuanced. There was no specific audience for the entire work. The book was composed in 1487 in what's now northwest Germany by Jacob Springer and Heinrich Kramer, both of them clergy in the Dominican order. It wasn't the first book to talk about witchcraft in this context. That was Formicarius, about half a century earlier, which it drew heavily from. But it was the first that we know of to address, and I use this word very loosely, the topic extensively. It functions more like a meticulously detailed monograph on the author's beliefs about witches than a functioning guide to witch hunting or representation of magical practices. As far as we know, nothing that it mentions was ever based on reality. It's historically important, though, because it was, as Kors and Peter note, the first encyclopedia of witch beliefs, and was constantly cited by Catholics and Protestants down to the 18th century. Though it was mostly the writer's own beliefs. It's made up of 3 sections, termed books, each devoted to different audiences. The first is aimed at preachers and talks about the reality of witches, why they exist, and how to speak about them. The second is focused on witches themselves, where they come from, what they do, and how to protect oneself from them. It has no specific audience and seems to exist to build upon the first and lay the foundation for the third. The third is devoted to the prosecution of witches, ranging from legal affairs to extraction of confessions, and is aimed at secular judges, so that they can take over the task of prosecuting witches on behalf of the inquisitors in what is now Upper Germany. First, a definition. The use of the English word witch is somewhat of a misnomer. It has different connotations from the word malefica, which the Latin Malleus Maleficarum almost exclusively uses. Whereas in English, witch can have a myriad of meanings depending on the speaker, the Latin word connotes wickedness in and of itself. It's a combination of the adjective malus, meaning evil, and the verb facere, meaning to do. A literal translation of malefica might be something to the effect of evil-doing woman, but witch works better for the sake of brevity, and witchcraft and sorcery are used synonymously in most translations. That the work chose to use this word when others exist in Latin to describe women with supernatural abilities and knowledge speaks to the views that it has about the concept. That's an important distinction to make. Its understanding of what we translate as witchcraft is very specific. The conception of witches, and of magic by extension, is one of evil. It differs from earlier conceptions of witchcraft that were much more generalized. Historian P.G. Maxwell-Stuart claims that the concept of witch didn't yet exist. But that was then. This changed during the late medieval period, the point where it became linked in popular consciousness with Christianity as a sort of shadow form of the religion. The shift in ideas came about for a number of reasons. Cristopher MacKay, in his introduction to the Malleus Maleficarum, attributed it to the Waldensians and the lies told about them. This was a Christian sect that frightened the mainstream church. The sect was regarded as being led by Satan himself, and in their rituals the heretics were thought to practice infant sacrifice and indulge in sexual promiscuity, including incest. Historian Hans-Peter Broedel attributes the shift to the Malleus Maleficarum and states that Prior to the 15th century, people spoke in terms of heretics, of maleficium, of monstrous female spirits, the lamia and strigae, but not of a single composite category, witch. By the mid-16th century, however, educated men generally agreed upon the definition of witch and witchcraft, definitions which drew upon, but were clearly distinguished from, older categories. Regardless of the origin of this view of witches, the idea was new. It was a conception of heresy developed into the idea that there was a heresy that had no actual doctrinal basis at all, and existed simply for the sake of perpetuating unspeakable acts of malevolent witchcraft. For Malleus Maleficarum, witches were usually female, because misogyny. Several different reasons were given for this. All that basically translates to misogyny. That's really just the entire idea behind the book. Men can be witches, as far as the book is concerned, though both the impetus and powers are different. Just as with women, sorcery comes from desecration of the faith, but there seems to be little demonic influence. For men, sorcery seems to be based on a desire for power. The discussion is brief, but their powers center on archery and enchanting weapons. Book 1 has a more theological aim than the other two books, such that we can justify using that word for this madness. It concerns itself largely with arguing for the existence of witches and discussing abstract issues pertaining to witchcraft, such as how God allows it to exist and what the nature of the witch's sins is. It also devotes substantial time to discussing demons and how they're involved with witchcraft. Spoiler, it's sexual. He's really just obsessed with this. It comes up again and again. Book 2 is devoted completely to the witches and their powers. It has topics ranging from how a witch makes a vow to a demon and then uses those powers, to a discussion of proper remedies for people afflicted with sorcery. Defilement's a major aspect of witchcraft for Book 2. The methods of becoming a sorceress involve either making a pact with a demon or renouncing the faith. In itself, this renunciation could be considered a mockery and thus defilement of baptism, but the sorcery itself hinges on defilement for its existence, as far as the book is concerned. Book 3 differs from the other two in that it contains little to no direct discussion of witches in the majority of its sections. It's more like a guidebook than any other section, as Broedel writes. Honestly, it reads like torture porn, considering the cruelty of the methods it suggests. It had neither legal nor ecclesiastical authority, and everything that it says is just a series of suggestions for how to conduct a trial, rather than an example of how one was usually conducted. As with earlier sections, the book also shows the idea of witchcraft as a spreading, contagious taint, rather than an individualized pollution. In talking about what to do when a sorceress is arrested, the book specifies that if she has maids or companions, they are detained separately, even if they are not accused. What stands out here is that these people are not being accused of anything, but are still called to be locked up. It's guilt by association. By being near a witch, they become tainted. Yeah. So what we have here is a pseudo-theological book of delusions written by a sexually repressed, self-righteous monk with bizarre and dangerous fantasies that inspired fuck knows how many actual witch trials. Like I said, evil. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe.